안녕하세요. 저는 케이tlyn입니다. Popkait's Corner에 환영합니다. 감사합니다.
Hola, bienvenidos al Rincón de Popkait.
Did you do it?
Yo soy Nicolás.
It's so dramatic.
I forgot my own name. I was like, I got all the words. Yay!
That's what I was like. I know certain sentences really well, but if you didn't gather, you've made it to Popkait's Corner, and this week we are talking about our journey into learning a new language. So, woo!
We decided not to learn a language we could speak to one another.
Yes.
So, or we decided to half learn two languages really, really well.
Well,
take your pick.
I would argue that we're still in the beginning of our learning journey. We're not quite a year in, but we're getting closer to the end of the year. We'll officially be a year in. And we'll talk about all of our learning journey. But if you didn't gather, I am learning Korean and Nicholas is learning Spanish. So it's been an interesting combo. The reason I didn't pick up Spanish with him is because I am terrible at rolling my R's.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And Korean is a language that decided to do away with R. And you feel better for it?
Well, it's weird because there is a character and it is... I feel terrible because I need to learn the character names. I just know what they represent. So
right.
I can... If you put something Korean in front of me, I can translate it and say it to you. Probably not well.
Yeah.
But I can, but I couldn't tell you. It's like, okay, what's this character? I'd be like, that represents a you.
So you still have to do that translation in your head as far as that goes. And when you say you can read, like, you can read and phonetically sound out what that word is saying, but you might not know what it means just yet.
Oh, absolutely. My vocabulary range in Korean is very, very little. Like,
I have something. I have a phrase.
Yes, go ahead.
Tenemos aprender más palabras en español y coreano.
What did
we
you...
need to learn more words.
Yeah, that's true. I was so the other day.
Tenemos que aprender.
What I was getting at though, there's a character and it's like here, let me write it for you.
Write it. You want a Sharpie so it can be nice and big?
No. Well, maybe. My Korean teacher, one of my Korean teachers, she wanted to see my writing. Actually, both of them. I have two Korean teachers, but I'll explain that later. They said my writing was pretty good. So
nice.
I've gotten compliments.
I don't have a Spanish teacher yet. I've been using the internet and...
Okay. So there's this character right here.
Okay.
And this character is...
I thought you were going to write it really big, but you decided to write it really small.
I wrote it how I typically write. It translates to like an L, but
it can also be a little R-ish.
It can be R-ish. So, for example, like "I love you" is like "salange," but a lot of people, you know, when they kind of pronounce it, they have like the R, so it's like "salange."
Salange.
So, it's kind of an interesting thing, and we'll dive into that. But I was proud because the other day we had our sheets and we were doing them, and I was reading the sheets, and they actually had Korean in them, and I read it. I was like, but I read it because you will see in Korean, like a lot of words, like banana, it didn't originate there. So the word for banana in Korean is banana. And that's
kopi.
Or kopi, which is coffee, or handphone, which is cell phone. That's what these sheets, it was queen, flat sheet, and it was like, that's what it said was like queen, flat sheet.
Right, but the sort of Koreanized version
But the Koreanized version of it.
That's cool.
So it's been cool, and that's what, if you give me something Korean, I can translate it for you and sound it out. But I could not tell you what it meant unless it was like a word that they were just doing, like I said, with banana or coffee or stuff like that.
So part of the reason I picked Spanish is we live kind of in the southern-ish United States and well, Midwest-ish, whatever you want to call Oklahoma. I've never like pinned down what Oklahoma actually is. It's kind of both of those things at the same time.
Yeah, it really depends because
I always just called it Texas's hat. So
that's how I view it. So that's why I always view us as like Southwest. But I know a lot of people are like, you're like Midwest, and they talk about Midwest things, and I'm like, I don't really embody those things.
Yeah, I feel like it can be both ways. But anyway, I feel like Spanish is something that I would encounter or have encountered far more than I have any other language.
Yeah.
And so I picked it. I also learned a little bit of it in school. It also uses characters that make sense to me and I have learned before. So there was not that quick curve that you had to get over wherever you were first learning sort of the Korean alphabet and that sort of thing.
I'm very excited to dive into that.
And so, and I liked learning it in school. There was just sort of like the grammar and that sort of thing that I hadn't fully grasped, and I'm still learning that. But for me, like a big part of the journey now is coming to, I need to hear people speaking it at me.
Yeah.
So that it doesn't sound like my brain has not decided that it isn't gibberish yet, and it can like actually process it as a language. And I think that the best way to do that is to just absorb people speaking at me at the rate that they would normally speak at, rather than like the really slow way that Duolingo and other speaking apps do it.
Especially because you do have the problem too, where I am learning it and I have 2 teachers and I have those dedicated nights.
Yep.
And then like I kind of show you what I've learned and you try to speak it. And Korean has a lot of like linking sounds. That's how you kind of get through a lot, is like the characters carry over, especially with vowels. They have like the NG with like, you say like an A, and this NG, it's silent when it's just a vowel. So if whatever the sound was down here, you link it to up here. And I know when I speak words at you,
I don't
they can carry over into Spanish because you get stuck in stuck in what I'm telling you with Korean and how to pronounce it.
Yeah,
so.
and it's like I want to do the same thing whenever I'm trying to imitate you, because like you did that mo go shippoyo.
Yeah,
and it has that shippoyo, and where that P
the P
kind of
is
carries.
the linking sound. Yeah,
and then I was doing something and like I was practicing the tenemos que aprender, and I really wanted to do like tenemos que, and like put it together. And I don't know if that sounds good or if that's okay, but it's like I want to carry the sound over into the next vowel and stuff like that. And I don't know. For me, the biggest thing that learning these languages has kind of brought is sort of an appreciation for the grammatical structures and the lack thereof in English, and the presence of them in other languages, or things that exist in English that don't exist over in those other languages, like an appreciation for like just the sheer diversity that language has to offer. Like,
it's so fun. It's one of those things. Learning a new language is both the most challenging thing because you know, especially like with the United States, when I listen to other people from other countries,
especially Europe and stuff like that,
is I feel like they're kind of put in the thing, especially since they're so close. It's like, well, I know not everyone's this way, but it's like, if you live in London, maybe you should learn German. So when you go to Germany, or Italian, or like, it feels more natural for them
to know more than one language
because they're given that from an early start. And I feel, I mean, honestly, it's not until here in middle school, and sometimes even high school, where they're like, you want to learn maybe like Spanish, or if you really want to get into it, French.
Yeah,
like,
if you want to be a French fancy.
And I don't always know if those, I mean, my thing with Spanish, because you know, when you're in school, a lot of them do require a foreign language. I am pretty good at reading Spanish.
Yeah.
I am not great at speaking Spanish.
That's how I feel as well. Like I can look at a passage in Spanish, and even if I don't know all the words yet, I can gather from context from the things that I do know, or the fact that Spanish shares a lot of bases with English, and so like, oh, I can tell what that word is supposed to be because it kind of looks like the English version of that word.
Yeah.
But like actually speaking it, I would say one of the biggest challenges for me with languages so far has been that language is not something that you can learn in isolation. You literally you have to learn it from and with other people.
Oh yeah, and that's so when we both decided to do this, we're like, okay, well, let's just start out and do with Duolingo.
Yeah.
I feel like for you, Duolingo was pretty helpful because they even like explain a lot of this stuff for you.
Yeah, that was the big part. They had all of those little tips and things where before you would start a session, and they would talk about like a certain set of grammar rules or a rule of thumbs and stuff like that. Like we learned like tener que, which is I have to sort of expressions. We learned like about reflexive.
Yeah.
And it's like why me gusta is me gusta and not like yo gusto, which is what I would think that it would be, but it's not. It's me gusta because of the way that you're using it to say this thing is liked by me.
Yeah.
And that was something I never understood, and no Spanish class ever like really explained that. And so now that I'm armed with that knowledge, I can kind of go in and construct sentences from the basis of grammar that I've picked up. But it was lacking in that in Korean, like hard.
Oh my goodness. So with Korean, I didn't, because I did it quite a while for you, and there were things that I picked up, but things would always change. And I was like,
there was the lack of consistency.
why did it do that? Mm-hmm. And unlike you, where they were like, oh, here's an explanation of why. Mm-hmm. Mine was like,
I don't know. Koreans do that sometimes.
No, they didn't even give me the option to.
Oh, they didn't even.
They were just like, here's your lesson. And I feel like it's because obviously the people who've created this app, they were like, we can get by enough. Like towards the end of my journey with Duolingo, they finally had added in Hangul, which is, or the alphabet. Obviously they always had Hangul. I forgot. I'm spacing right now. I apologize. But they finally added in the alphabet, and for you to actually like
learn and draw the characters.
But they still did a terrible job of like explaining, like they did it, but I know there was one I literally reported, and I was like, you don't have the right sound for this. This is an O, and you're putting the U sound on it.
Right. Now that you were an expert in the language, you were
no,
like,
I'm not saying that at all. I'm just like, you don't have this mapped correctly.
Right.
And that was kind of the end of my journey with Duolingo. After that, I was like, okay, I don't know. I had already gone through, and I actually there was something that someone had suggested, because they're like, if you want to know Korean, you need to learn the alphabet first.
Right.
So I went and I worked through a online program and taught myself the alphabet. And after that, it's like, okay, I understand like what these sounds were.
Suddenly this is all making sense to me.
Yes, like all these things, it's like, and I knew words, like I mean, obviously the way that I open the show, that is the formal way of, that's a form. They have honorifics. They have different layers of honorifics. And this is what I had a problem with Duolingo. So the imnida, that is like very formal.
Right. For saying that, hi, I am Caitlin.
Yes.
Yeah.
And well, yeah, because I even did the Jonin. So if I wanted to be less formal, I would say something like 안녕, 나는 Caitlin imnida, or not an 나는 Caitlin Ayo. Instead of like the imnida. Because that's like the ending sentence, and that's your way of being like proper. And because there's ayo and there's yayo based on whatever it ends in like a consonant or a vowel.
Right.
And those are like less formal, but they're still like, you're still being,
right, polite.
Yes, polite. Yeah. That's a great way of saying it. And then there is one where you don't have anything at the end.
You're formal as fuck.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, informal as fuck.
Yeah, this is how you would talk to friends.
You're just a buddy.
Like the ayo, yayo, or imnida, that's how you would want to. Imnida is like if you have met someone who's older than you for the first time, that is how you would talk to them.
Yeah.
It's kind of like listening to Korean dramas. The way, and I've picked up a lot. I'm still learning words, but I can hear how they end sentences, and like it's different how they talk to each other, especially in this one.
Yeah.
We're watching Beyond Evil right now, and there's two detectives, and one of them's younger, and usually when he talks to the older one, he uses imnida. But then when he's talking sometimes to other people, I hear the like ayo or ayo, or I don't hear anything at all.
It's less, he's being less formal with them.
But it's even like how you address someone, because compared to us being like you or stuff like that, they have like titles like ajusi or ajuma, which is like ajusi is like the male ajuma, or you have like hyung, sunbae nim, hyung. Sunbae nim is usually, especially they have like a chief, and he would refer, hyung is what he would refer to as his partner, which is like older male.
Yeah.
So
from another male.
Even
it's even different between.
Because woman, and this is usually, it's an older male, but I know how a lot of people use it is more like in a romantic sense, is there's like oppa, and And then for men, usually if they're referring to someone who's like a female, they say like Nuna, who's like their same age.
Right.
You know.
But it kind of translates, at least the way that they do in all of the Korean dramas, is like, hey, sister, or like stuff like that.
Yeah.
So.
And it's so interesting to kind of hear their language and how they use it, because there's a lot to it. There's so many layers. And similar to what you said to Spanish, it's really cool learning another language and getting to the point where you see and understand these different things. And I'm still like, I am nowhere near perfect.
Well, we're both just dipping our toes in the water.
We're both just dipping our toes, but this far in even, it's so incredible. And I'm sorry if I sound funny or if I talk funny a little bit. I have braces in, and it's a journey, and I'm still getting used to talking with them.
Well, I'll have you know you sound fantastic.
Well, I've noticed I trip over myself a lot.
That's
so.
okay. I do it, and I don't have braces in.
Well, you already have pretty teeth.
Oh, it's because I had braces. I guess what I was gonna say is two of the major things, and I don't know if Korean has this, but Spanish and sort of the way that they gender their language.
Yeah.
And how they have masculine and feminine words and that sort of thing. That's a really interesting concept. And so many other languages do that. English is one of the notable exceptions in Europe that doesn't do it. And I was wondering, does Korean have a similar concept where they gender things that way that are like not associated with a person?
I wouldn't say necessarily, because I already, like we talked about, is like Hyung and Nuna and Oppa. I feel like they have that like title wise,
right? They gender their expressions to
and how
people.
How males would refer to another male, and a female would. Yeah, like they have that level, but in terms of actual sentences, it's kind of how I said, where it's more what you would put at the end.
Right.
Because that's how you know you're ending a sentence. Like that's how you know that you're at the end.
That is an interesting concept in Korean that that doesn't exist in Spanish or in English.
Yeah.
And it's the idea of just like sounds that are there to indicate I'm done speaking.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of cool. Like it's a really neat part of the language that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because like it totally gives people pause to be like, oh yeah, now you can start speaking because I've officially finished. And I think that's kind of a cool. I don't know. It's interesting.
It is.
And I think that a lot of the times, like these languages, they're a reflection of a lot of the culture.
Oh yeah.
That invented them essentially. And so like, you know, Spanish being Latin based and stuff like that, you have. And it being so familiar with a lot of the other languages and because the mixing bed that is sort of the English language as well, you have a lot of familiarity in the way that they speak and like the tones and stuff like that. You do have kind of like in Korean, you do have like not honorifics so much as like the way that you talk to your elders or people you respect, you would change to usted.
Yeah.
And you would use more formal language so that you wouldn't use the more casual, like if I said, what do you want to eat? Like you would be like, ¿cuál quieres comer? But if you were being more formally, you would be, ¿cuál quiere? Without the S at the end. Because you're kind of referring to them as usted. So like they have that in language, and that's something that doesn't really exist in English.
No.
And so I think it's interesting that these languages have built-in grammar for formality and stuff like that in a way that English doesn't, which is just basically use bigger words and speak nicer.
Yes. Absolutely. No, that's kind of, I agree with you wholeheartedly. And that's been kind of, I think, the fun part of learning it is like all the history behind it.
Yeah.
When I kind of reached my point and I went and did another program through someone else, I got into it a little bit, and then I was like, it's hard for me because I just need to talk to someone. Yeah. And after that, I hired my first tutor, and I hired through Takes Lessons. She is amazing.
Yeah. Would you recommend Take Lessons?
I would actually recommend Take Lessons. I think a lot of the people who are in there, and if you're really interested in Korean, I mean, first off, just do if you need something and you're not comfortable meeting in person right now, which I totally understand, it is extremely helpful for something like that. I think the thing that makes it hard, and this is why I ended up getting my second Korean tutor, is sometimes you can't hear each other very well.
Right. The internet, it being the internet.
But I've learned so much from her.
Mm-hmm.
Like, my grammar, we talk about it. And there's just like little things that it's so fun to talk about. And for example, she knows that I like cooking a lot. So there was one at the end where we were just kind of hanging out and we bonded over sesame oil and how if you want good sesame oil, you need to go to an Asian market. And is it wrong? How much has that sesame oil that I got? It just like
it's so much better.
It's so much better.
If you're gonna get sesame oil, if you're gonna be adventurous with your food, and I say adventurous in big quotations because come on, guys, get sesame oil. Going to the little Korean market there in Moore was so much better than whatever we bought at Target.
Yeah, or any of the stores because they all sell like the same one, and I can't recommend it enough how fun it is to explore something new. We just recently went, and now we have all these new ramens to try.
Yep.
And I would like to see, because everyone's like, the spicy level for them compared to American, I would like to know the difference. Can I handle?
Are you going to be able to do Korean spicy?
I would like to see. And then, like I've told you before, they have fresh kimchi and stuff. But it's kind of, we like cooking a lot of different types of food. But it was very fun to bond with someone over sesame oil.
Yeah.
Like
it's a stupid thing to bond over, but
we were, because she wanted to share this YouTube channel with me. She said that they make the best Korean foods, and so she wanted to share it with me, and she asked me if I'd ever been to an Asian market, and I was like, yeah, we have a little Korean market that we go to, and I got like sesame oil, and then we just talked for like 10 minutes about how good sesame oil was, and how like if you want good sesame oil, you can't go to a grocery store.
The real deal.
And it's so silly that something like that you can have a conversation over,
but
it was such a fun conversation.
Well, you know, I go back, and recently we were talking with some of our friends, and we were brought up cooking and some of the stuff that we were making. We brought up ginger, and they were like, "Ooh, I don't know about ginger."
Oh my god, ginger will rock your
world. And I was like, "What? It's a good spice. Why would you not put it in things? It's amazing."
Well, I thought it was so funny because they were like, "Oh, I just don't know how that's like in a lot of Asian foods," and I was like, "It's also in the tea that I drink each morning, and that tea is a British tea. It's a peach and ginger."
I don't know. I just thought it was funny, and like I think sometimes it's kind of cool to be exploring these different cultures and stuff like that. And part of those different cultures is their food, and their alcohol, and just sort of like so much stuff, and it's so cool. It's so cool.
It is
to get a chance to, I don't know, see things that are outside of yourself.
It's also cool learning these other languages. Like I think we both had moments. One of mine was for me is I learned so. There's like to say I want to do something, and you were talking about this earlier. You have 고싶어요. And if you wanted to add, you have like your verbs, and you would take like the verb stem. So like Nicholas was saying earlier, he said 먹, and so 먹다 is the verb, and you take 먹, and then 고싶어요, 먹고 싶어요, and that is I want to eat. And then he was saying 뭐 먹고 싶어요, which means what do you want to eat? Because that was something my Korean teacher, she was like, you should say this to your husband whenever you guys want food. And I
I know it.
Yeah, we say it back and forth to each other all the time. But I got so excited because I listened to quite a bit of K-pop, and I was listening to Baekhyun, I think it's Baekhyun, and his song Cry for Love. And there's a point, and I heard Go Shippo, and I was like, oh my god! So then as soon as I got in, I pulled up the lyrics to verify, did I actually hear Go Shippo? Because I don't know what the verb is. I'm still learning. You just heard
the ending part of it.
But I heard the ending part of it, and I did. And I remember coming in, she goes, how did your studying go for the week? And I was like, oh my god, I heard the Go Shippo. And she laughed, she goes, so you know he wants something, but you don't know what he wants. And I said, yep.
He can't help it.
And she's a lot of fun to deal with. But the reason but for you, sorry, I'm getting too far ahead of myself.
Oh, wow.
For you, when we went to LA for our anniversary, we stayed in Little Tokyo, but we went into these markets, and one of them, you heard a dad and his son having a conversation in Spanish, and you basically were able to understand what they were saying to each other.
Yeah.
Because
I mean, it wasn't a complicated conversation.
I know.
The dad was irritated with the kid because he was carrying too many things, and the dad was basically like, you got to put stuff back.
Yeah.
And then the kid was like, I don't know what to put back. And he just was like, just please let me buy you something, please.
Yeah. It's just one of those things, like, when you recognize it, you get excited. Like, you tune into it almost because you just want to be able to, you're like, oh, I kind of understand this.
It's fun. I mean, like like everybody, I like to eavesdrop on people. And I think that this is really just an opportunity for me to expand the people that I eavesdrop on.
No, you've always been really good in Spanish. You actually went really far in Spanish in high school because usually it's only 2 semesters are required.
Yep.
And you did like 4 years? Or just 3 years?
I did 3, but...
you had the awkward year where you were in another state. And
yeah.
Yeah, okay. So. But you still, like, a lot of people drop out after that. And
I think it's fun. I wish that I had done more.
Yeah.
So, and I wish that, one of the downsides to learning, or not Korean, Spanish in high school and stuff like that is
it's not always the most helpful way of learning because it's a way of them teaching like a whole class instead of like an individualized
yeah. And you being the teacher being the only one that speaks it fluently and then asking you to have conversations with one another. It's like putting 2 babies in a room and being like, babies, teach each other how to speak English, please. And that's just not going to happen. The best that they can do is they'll make their own language, and that will be really cool, but it won't be the language you were hoping that they learned. So.
No. And that's kind of my problem right now with Korean is I still need to learn a lot of words.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was able to put together the beginning of this, and a lot of these words I practiced a lot, so I sound okay.
Yeah.
But I still need to learn a lot of words, and
Tenemos que aprender más palabras. I always have to think about what the word for words is. That's still not right.
You at least can have short conversations because, like, this week you had a conversation with an employee, and I know it was simple, but you were still able to do it.
I know. I had just a guy at work. I was like asking if he was ready to do stuff, and we went back and forth just a tiny bit. It was all text, so I got lots of time to think about what I was going to say. That's the other half of it is like I know the words and I can construct the sentence, but I almost need to prepare it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I'm going to do like that tenemos. Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of my problem right now. And that's it's like I've been practicing my intro for a while in my head. And we actually restarted once because I froze.
The camera was on you and you're like...
Yeah, I was like, oh, I didn't finish my thing. I was like, you take over now.
Yeah, I was like, I thought you were going to say one more thing, but you just stopped.
Yes. So that's kind of, it's a big, you're getting your brain used to it.
Yeah.
And that's probably going to take a while for both of us.
Yeah.
But I think it's so much fun.
It is so much fun. There was a couple of things that I wanted to talk about that were things that I were looking up with how do you learn languages and stuff like that. And there were 2 concepts that I thought were really cool, and I kind of alluded to one earlier, but it's the our brains are really geared towards repetition and that sort of thing. So when we listen to somebody else speak another language, our brain literally interprets it as gibberish.
Yeah.
It can't expect the patterns. So much of our brain and the way that we comprehend language is that there's an expectation to what the thing that they're saying is going to be. So we are finishing people's sentences in our head 99% of the time. And that's how we're so good at being capable of comprehending them. And part of what makes learning a new language so difficult is that our brains lack the ability to do that predictive part.
Yeah.
So we hear it exactly as we're hearing it, and so we don't get to do the predictive part of okay, where I'm putting the sentence together, because our brains are hooked up to be okay, this is a sentence, I know what the sentence is leading, all this other stuff. So it's the same kind of reason whenever you're learning even new stuff in your language, if you can't predict where it's going to go, that sentence is just harder for you to grok and understand as you're listening to it. And so one of the big first things you need to do is you have to be able to create a predictive sort of network in your brain so you can even hear a language.
Yeah.
Because before that, you literally won't be able to understand it. Like, you have to be able to make it where, oh, I know that whenever they say K or mo or something like that, that it's a question, and you can shift your brain into the predictive network for deciding that what this sort of question is going to be and that sort of thing. Because, like, so much of hearing and interpreting language is anticipating language.
Yeah.
And without that aspect of it, it's just gibberish.
Oh yeah,
So.
and I feel like if you're going to learn, you have to surround yourself with all of this. Like,
yeah.
On my Instagram, I follow so many accounts, and it's partly just because I see it, so I hear it. I mean, it's a lot of different like little Instagram teachers who they've made a thing for themselves through social media by teaching people another language.
Yeah.
And it's fun too, because there was one like I just recently followed, and she was like teaching you how to sing happy birthday in Korean. But she also does little things like, how do you do like LOL or ha 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 in Korean? And I had already known this from reading stuff, but it's still
watching
fun.
Run BTS.
We watch Run BTS every week. And you really have to make sure that you are constantly in it. It's why I watch K-dramas. It's why I love K-dramas and I love K-pop, so it's not like, oh man, so hard.
Yeah, I think that's where I've been pretty weak with my Spanish learning. And the simple fact of the matter is I probably need to get a tutor or somebody that I can talk to in Spanish, but I'm also a loner and I get frustrated when I can't learn something on my own, which makes learning a language so complicated.
And I'm a shy introvert, so who knows how who knows? I just want to say his excuses are stupid.
I know they're stupid. It comes from a pride thing.
I know.
But I've kind of done the same thing as you, though not kind of intentionally, but there are quite a few creators on YouTube who do tutorials and things in Unity, and which is the game engine that I use to make most of the games, or pretty much all of the games that I've ever made. And there are a few of them that they speak in Spanish. And so they're either from Spain, a lot of them are from South America, Chile and Argentina specifically. And I love to listen to them. And it's one of those things like, I know what they're talking about. I can see what they're talking about, and I can use that kind of as that sort of like predictive kickstart to help me kind of learn and understand the language. And sometimes I can understand it without needing the subtitles on, and sometimes I'm like, well, hold up, wait a minute, Jatelli, I need some. Jatelli is my favorite one of those channels.
One of my favorite things is I mostly drink water or tea. But sometimes I'm like, I want my very specific Gatorade. And I'm only bringing this up because this Gatorade is not in English. You can get it in Walmart and Target most of the time, but it's not popular here. So it was not popular here. It was released for the World Cup. Yeah. And they keep it used to be in English, but now it's only sold in the Spanish language. So every time we get it, you love reading the bottle.
I think it's so funny. I don't know. I think it's cucumber Gatorade.
Yeah, cucumber lime Gatorade. Yeah. It's so good. To me, I'm like, no Gatorade flavor compares. But that is most definitely, we get it and you're like, oh,
it's in Spanish.
Yeah.
And then it always makes me think of Marco's Hot Dogs and Tacos in Longmont, Colorado. If you're in the Longmont, Colorado area and Marco's Hot Dogs and Tacos still exists.
It most definitely does. If you were in Boulder, Colorado, drive 30 minutes to Longmont, Colorado.
And go to this little, it's not a hole in the wall because they don't have a wall.
Yeah, it's like a...
Well, they bought they bought a garage and then they got these two little
food
pop up food. No, they're not.
I know they're like the
food carts that you'd see on like a corner in like a big city.
But I was trying to say it's a pop up food truck with a little building attached to it.
Yeah, and they sell all sorts of tacos and hot dogs, and I always think about them with this Gatorade because they had drinks. You could get like a can of soda or whatever, but then they also had a big old Gatorade jug of cucumber water, and that was the big thing that you could buy as well.
I think it was called like Fresca, and they had like a cucumber, and I always wanted to try it, but I never did. But their tacos were so phenomenal. Good. I think they were on that Diners, Drive-Ins, and whatever. They? Yeah,
they were good.
They're so good.
Yeah. And their hot dogs were pretty good too. They did bacon wrapped hot dogs, which
Yeah.
I didn't love, but I could eat like 4 or 5 of their tacos without batting an eye. So
I sometimes would do the thing is I'd get like one taco and one hot dog because the hot dogs are really big and the tacos are really tiny. But yeah, a lot of the times we were like, you got like 4 tacos and I got 2, and they were really so good. The carne asada was just phenomenal.
That was my favorite.
But that's kind of what's been interesting. Now, the reason I got a second Korean tutor.
Oh yeah, let's hear about this.
Well, here's the thing. Sometimes you have random connections, like your father-in-law.
My father.
Your father. And
What did my father?
Your father.
My father knows Korean?
No.
What?
But he loves donuts.
and more importantly,
he had a donut shop that
more importantly, he has
a sweet tooth.
Spent most of his life.
Oh yeah, he spent most of his life overseas.
Half
of his life overseas for work. Where he does back and forth, working mostly with Chinese factories, but
spent a lot of time in China.
Yeah.
And then some time in both Japan and Korea and then
India.
And then quite a bit of time in India as well.
But sometimes he goes to donut shops and he has a donut shop of choice.
Right.
And he bonds with the people there. And they're Korean.
Yeah.
And then
back in the day, we had an Indian guy that did a donut shop and his name was Jay.
And you always talk about how he made the best donuts and you're sad about it because
I wish that Jay's Donuts were still around.
I know. But you're like, I want to learn Korean. And father-in-law, I know you...
Is that how you call? I forget that you call my dad that all the time.
Yeah, father-in-law.
Father-in-law.
That's how I address him.
Yeah.
No.
She's so respectful.
So respectful. I want him... But I'm like, you have friends who own the donut shop.
And he says, daughter-in-law, I do.
Yeah, this is how we talk to each other.
Yeah. You guys have matching t-shirts too now, so.
We do? Yes, we do.
Mm-hmm.
And you say, I need to learn Korean, and my online tutor is great, but I'd also like to have one in person.
Yeah.
Do you think they would be interested? And then he says, I'll ask. And then he has to cut sugar out of his life, so he doesn't go for a while. And you're like, father-in-law, please.
Father-in-law, please go get a donut.
Please.
And he says, I mean, if you're going to twist my arm.
Oh, man. And then he goes, and you talk to the donut shop lady, and she's like, I'm going to hook you up with my sister.
Mm-hmm.
And then I meet her sister now, and she's the one who taught me the the informal way of saying, like, introducing yourself with
right, because you told her about how you had learned it, and she was like, that's so formal.
Oh, she was like, you did learn it. I get excited, because my pronunciation, and I think any English speaker, and I'll get into one of my pet peeves in a second.
Okay, whoa, man.
Yeah, you know where I'm going with this.
Popkait Corner's pet peeves is one of my favorite segments.
But my pronunciation's never going to be perfect, but it feels so good when they're like, wow, you did that really well. Yeah.
Done.
But right now, we went through a whole lesson where we were just trying to understand where I am at and how she can help me. Mm-hmm. And I did a lot where I would listen and I would try to write down what she said. Because obviously there's things that hearing from a native speaker and then like just hearing from the internet is going to be different. So hearing from her, I'm able to kind of get better at listening. But she also realized, oh, wow, she's really good at reading. So she bought me a book in Korean, like a young adult book. And I have to read out loud to her so I can get better at pronunciation. She was translating what it meant, but right now, then she paused and she said, that's just going to take too long. Why don't we focus more on really pronunciation? And then as we get through it, I have a little dictionary, which if you're going, this hot tip with Popkait, if you are learning Korean, or I'm going to say just Korean, do not rely on Google Translate. Google Translate is not your
garbage.
It's not your friend. If you're going to learn and you need a dictionary, because you do, download Naver Dictionary and you'll get this cool little
it's never going to focus.
Come on.
I want to like tap the screen to make it focus, but then I'm like, no.
Okay, whatever. Get this little Naver
We'll put up a video. A screenshot of it.
No, okay. Get this little Naver. I was like, maybe they'll see the icon.
Yeah.
Get the Naver Dictionary.
Okay.
Naver. It's your Korean to English, English to Korean, but it will help you.
Does it only do Korean and English?
No.
Or is it a dictionary for any language?
I mean, those aren't. I think maybe it can expand from there, but I am doing
I would say, as far as European languages go, Google is much better still. And it's only because Google probably focuses on languages that are important to the United States. And European languages tend to rank higher in that regard.
Yeah, this is just English and Korean. But, if you're learning an Asian language, like, you need something because you have to learn the characters. The characters are an important part. And this dictionary, once you kind of got them down, having a dictionary like this, it really helps. And I'm now like even texting and typing in Hangul, and that's really cool.
Hangul that's the name of the language? Okay. I always forget.
Hangul. It's really, really cool, and it's so exciting. I can't even. I love it. It's so exciting and so rewarding to be able to recognize. But I am so far from being perfect.
Yeah.
But I have a really good, I think, system now. Now I have to get back into studying regularly because a lot of things popped up, and I've just kind of like studying has not been my strong suit. So I have a lot of studying that I have to do this weekend for classes this week.
For me, the two big things that I really need to do is I do need to find somebody that I can speak to in Spanish.
You do.
And like work on being more conversational and kickstarting my brain into being like not being deer in the headlights every time they're like, say a Spanish phrase. And I'm like, oh. And then the other thing is just expanding my vocabulary because it's so small. Like I know a lot about because Duolingo focuses on things that are probably most prevalent for the people that are learning, which is like school and travel. And so like I know a lot of that.
Like Duolingo for me, I was so excited because after the first one's just like common phrases. And I did, like 안녕하세요, 안녕, 감사합니다, 환영합니다, 만나서 반갑습니다.
What is sorry?
죄송합니다. Like I know a lot of phrases like that because of it, but then you get to the next part and you're like food, and you're like, yes, finally, awesome. I'll learn phrases like how to ask for food. Yeah. And it was like the bear eats a fish, and I was like, when am I gonna use that? When am I gonna be like a bear eats a fish?
Well, when we go to Seoul next year and we come across a bear eating a fish, and we need to tell someone about it.
Bear eating fish.
Yeah, they'll be like, oh, okay. Yeah, no, he does that.
I just thought it would be more where it's like, how do you order something?
Yeah, I mean, that was absolutely what it was in Spanish. I mean, like, we got, like, straight up, it was like, where do I go to the hotel? Where's the airport? Here's my suitcase. Do you have your passport? All those sorts of things.
Sorry, I said, oh man, I should have done your favorite. Pet peeve. You ready for my pet peeve? You know what this is.
I want to make a graphic for this.
So, I follow someone who he's a content creator, and he used to be with a channel that I followed. Yeah. And he kind of got into K-pop and learning and wanted to learn Korean around the same time that I did. And let me tell you something. Yeah. If you are learning Korean, I think it is very rude to be like 안녕 아세요. And that is how he did it. And I just find that despicable. Like, if you're going to learn a language, learn how to pronounce it. Okay? Don't play this game of like...
I'm going to half-ass
it. Yeah. 감사합니다. Like, oppa. Like, don't be that way. Like, try your best. And these are even with my tutors. What they tell you is they're like, if you're going to learn it, actually talk to us and talk. Don't do this like what I would call it is don't be an asshole. What does it say?
It says Popkait's pet peeve.
Ooh, I love it. Popkait's pet peeve.
Your hair is exploding and you're angry.
I love it. Yeah,
it's perfect. There's also el rincón up there because I didn't know how to say corner in Spanish. So sorry, everybody. The illusion is broke.
And I know some people might argue of like, well, no.
No, that was the second point I was going to bring up with the brain thing. Mm-hmm. The other thing, and you talked about this with BTS because they're learning English and they spoke about it in an interview.
That's one of my exciting points.
Points. And it's the idea that you have to develop a Spanish voice.
Yes.
You have to develop a Korean voice. Like to use the same voice that you use to speak in your native tongue or really any language, you're gonna fall flat. Like you have to kind of change and modulate the way that you put the words out there to better work with the sounds. Like I find that whenever I speak Spanish, I always say like I talk deeper, and I always think to myself, I sound like that dude that does the like previews for like some like local network TV, and it's like this week on Family Guy type thing. They do that on like the Fox 12 local channel thing. KCO those 4 and then it's just like really lame. But that's how I sound. Like I feel like I sound like that, and I put on that voice, but I feel like it helps to pronounce the words differently and that sort of thing. And like
it does.
You have to get in the mindset, and you have to like train those vocal cords and do all that
You
stuff.
do.
I sound like a tool that doesn't know what he's talking
No. That's it's like it is different. So for example, in Korean,
Yep.
you use your throat more.
Yep.
And I've talked about this in a previous one. Like I felt like I like how I move my jaw is different, but you do use your throat more. And I was listening.
You talked about your muscles and your jaw being sore after
learning in the beginning. Because it's just how you move them is different. Because how you pronounce them, like in, like when you say like ne, which is yes, sorry, I don't know why that blanked on me. Like when you usually say like Nicholas, you would think that your tongue like would come up and down, but how you would do it in Korean is your tongue would hit the back of your teeth, which is why it can make like a D sound. So ne, but I was reading an article from Jungkook from Weverse magazine, and he was talking about when he speaks in English, he has a higher voice, and when he sings in English, like it's higher, and you can hear it. We did an interview, and it's more nasally.
What was that? The Vanity interview?
Yeah.
And he was doing they were doing the Google.
Yeah, Google Wired.
Google
search.
Wired. Yeah, and they were doing the Google search thing.
Yeah.
And whenever he was reading them, I was just like, oh, it sounds so weird because I've heard him speak just Korean, and it's like he's like
you. Yeah.
Yeah, he's like way up here on his English voice.
And that's what I told Nicholas too, is like it made me feel validated because I speak it with my throat in Korean, but in English we do tend to be more nasally, like we speak more.
At least we are, yeah.
No, most people do. I mean, that's just how it is. So it's exciting because for I have a pretty deep voice in general. So then speaking in Korean, it is deeper. Yeah. And then when I get shy, my voice goes high pitch. So I might be high pitch at the beginning of this episode, and it's usually because I'm shy and bare or something like that. But as I normal out, it kind of goes deeper. Yeah. But that was it. And then another one was Jen. He was talking about, because when they sing their English songs, they're doing them phonetically. Yep. Which Korean in general is a very phonetic language, which was really cool. Yeah. Because that's like the Queen Sheets and how they translate them very phonetically. Right.
Before we
go ahead.
Go on, I was going to say, I was reading this thing about the Korean language and how the way that they put their characters together, like their characters are designed so that like any sound can be encapsulated in them, which is something that like we don't always have that in English characters. And so sometimes like you have things doing like double duty, and we pronounce them weird because like that's just it actually from an old French word, and so it's just different. Okay. Yes. But the Korean alphabet was designed with the intention of being able to encapsulate lots of different sounds. Not for like modern sense. It's an old language. So I just thought that was cool that their character system had sort of like forethought built into it.
No, and that's something I've even already had trouble with. Like when I was reading out, like she would be like, because A here has so many different sounds. Yeah. Like, and like with my name, Caitlin, like the A is A, like that's how you would think it. Yeah. But the A in Korean is and E sounds like A. Yeah. So I would read it and I'd get like an A, and I'd be like, I'd try to put the A in there, and she's like, and I was like, yes, you were right. It is it is not A. And that's something, so like at the end of when I said Popkate's Corner A.
Popkate's
Corner A Hanyawanida, the A was at the end, I was using it to basically say to, so I was saying, welcome to Popkate's Corner. And I might have totally done that wrong because that was something I've learned recently. So if I did,
hey man,
Jesuanida.
it's okay. It's okay to make mistakes.
But I was listening to Jin talk, and they were singing the BTS songs phonetically, and he's like, sometimes to help him pronounce the word, he would write like what it would be in Korean underneath. So like butter, you would have like your B character, your U, and how they structure them so that you would be under here, and then you have like your TT, but stuff like that. I do the same. I would occasionally do the same thing. It's like, because in G/ it can make a K sound.
Right. Remember, write it big.
I am not doing that.
No! The camera will never focus.
Okay.
So
these two I always get. So this is N and this is G/K.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you're reading these, it's very hard to not want this to be N.
Yeah.
For me.
Right, because it looks like you would think of it look like an N. Yeah.
And so sometimes it helps. And I know someone I had watched, they were like, don't do that because then you'll never learn the language. I don't agree with that. It just helps you. It's like, you need to remember this is that sound, so you kind of put that sound and you get used to it.
Right.
And I get more used to it every day, but it's a nice reminder of like, don't do that. It's not an N, it is a G. It is a K. So I don't know. My fun stories to see that other people who are
doing
also
that.
Who are learning, they're learning English, and I'm
like learning it backwards.
Yeah, like we're learning it reverse of each other, but to see that they have thought these same things or have done these same things, it's exciting because you're like, yeah, I'm doing it.
I think this is one of the coolest things that a person can do, and I think that absolutely everybody should try at some point in their life to try and learn a language to the best of their ability. I think that in school we need better school to actually teach other languages. I think that in the United States it makes perfect sense that Spanish be something that we teach more often. But, you know, in different parts of the United States, especially on like the West Coast and stuff like that, I do think that actually like Asian languages might be the better fit.
It might. Maybe. I mean,
especially depending on the community and like how it's built and everything. Like,
I do want to go back because I said something. I understand, like with my pet peeve. I'm not saying when you're learning the language, it's not okay. I'm just saying like when you learn a word,
right?
You know, like annyeong, annyeonghaseyo, and stuff like. Oh, my braces did not like that one today. No. Annyeonghaseyo. Like, there's a way to pronounce it, and to be like annyeonghaseyo, I think is very rude because I know he talked about how he even did online classes with actual tutors and stuff, and I know that they tell you to say annyeonghaseyo.
Yeah.
It's not hard to do. Just.
Unless, what if it is?
It might be, but I felt like he was also trying to be funny, and I didn't think it was.
You were like, that's disrespectful, stop it.
Yes, like, you know, and maybe I'm also coming from it with my tutors, where they're like, because that's what I was like, how do I get better at this stuff? And they call it romanization, is they're like, you might have to romanization it a little bit. Yeah.
Your mouth just isn't trained to say that sort of sound.
But you can still at least try. Like, there's a difference between trying and then just being like...
Just being, okay, well, I did my best. I mean, it's kind of like the word coffee in Korean and how they've made it kopi.
Kopi, yeah.
Kopi. Because the F sound isn't something that really is that prevalent over there. And so, like, they approximate it to the best of their ability. But if they were attempting to learn English, they would probably try really hard to do the F, and try to say it in sort of the anglicized version of that. Yeah. So
that's all I'm saying. It's like, obviously,
treat the languages with respect, son.
Yes, it's like, obviously you're gonna fumble. Like, I know a lot of English speakers, they have a hard time with Spanish and stuff in the beginning. Yeah, and obviously
there are plenty of times that I am trying to like roll the R, and I don't need to roll the R, and I'm like, what the fuck am I doing with my life?
And we might pronounce it, and we might sound a little hick or something. Yeah. I'm just saying, be mindful and try your hardest not to just be like, I'm doing the blocks of the sound to get through it. Right.
I think learn like.
It makes it the more you do it, the easier it is. Yeah. Like it.
And the other big thing that I love about all of this is that, and you talked about this with the soy sauce. The sesame oil, is that learning somebody else's language gives you a bridge to other cultures.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like it opens up the world a little bit in a way, and I think that's really cool. And I don't know. I wish that the United States put more emphasis into language learning, especially early on, because like if we were learning Spanish in kindergarten, first grade, and stuff like that, I feel like a lot more people would be fairly competent speakers by the time that they were in high school and stuff like that. Like it's
something we both talked about. Like when we have kids, we would like them to start learning earlier. Now, if they're going to learn Korean or Spanish or maybe both. We'll see.
¿Por qué no los dos?
I guess it depends on who's fluent, and right now I'm on track.
Whoa, hey, hold up. No.
Ani. Yeah.
But I think it's fun.
It is fun.
Anyway, that's why we're better than you.
No,
thanks for watching.
We are most definitely not. I'm just, learning languages is really fun, and if you want to challenge yourself, there's a lot of things too. Like apparently, learning another language helps with dementia. It helps to like keep your brain.
It opens up new neural pathways,
neural pathways.
You need those neural pathways. Your old ones will get all gungy.
That's cool. It's cool to do something. And who knows, like I know sometimes my dad has talked about picking back up German. Mm-hmm. I've heard German with your work. That's usually the TikToks. If I see, or not TikToks, I see them on Instagram, but at the end, they always have the stupid little, like, this was obviously from TikTok. But on Instagram, it's always the worst. It's usually someone from Germany. They're like English speakers being like, yeah, I learned another language. Look at me. I finally did it. And me on my 5th language. I'm like, shut up.
I'm sorry you're surrounded by people that speak other languages and it seems important to you.
Well, not only that, like we very much expect people to
learn English or get out.
I mean, I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying like we do expect more people to meet us. There was something I was talking with my work. A lot of people are trying to plan to go overseas, and we're planning to go to Tokyo and Seoul. Mm-hmm. And they were like,
"Thank God, a lot of people speak English, pretty much everywhere." They
were like, "Ooh, I would never go to another country if I didn't speak their language. Like that just seems too intimidating." And I'm like, "You could put in some effort." And most of them don't know that I'm studying Korean as well. Yeah. So I'm like. But it's also like if you do the research, you know that a lot of their signs are also in English to help English speakers. Yep. And
I guess the nice thing for us is that the international language of business has basically been English for like the last 30 some years.
Yeah,
and mostly because England controlled 3/4 of the world for a long time.
Yeah,
so it makes it convenient to go overseas and stuff like that, because most people in Europe, you can find a lot of people that speak English. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of students in Korea and Japan who speak English. Any business people probably know a little bit of English because they interact, or any international business people probably know a little bit of English because they interact so much.
Yeah.
So
just be open-minded.
Try open-minded. Something new. If they can do it, so can you.
Yeah, because it's all just about seeing something in a different kind of way.
Yeah.
You get to... It's exciting to watch something in another language and be like, hee hee hee, I know. Like I heard
what they said.
She was like, his name was... insert name. And I was like, I understood that whole sentence. No, I'm talking about I watched Nevertheless. And she was talking about his name in there, and I was like, I knew that whole sentence. Like, it's very rewarding, and it's cool, and you were going to get so frustrated, but find the resources, and if there's one thing that you take away, the most important resource here is finding content that you can watch in another language, because it's going to get you better at hearing or listening. It's going to get you will recognize things more often. You'll help pick up vocabulary. Mm-hmm. There's just so much that you're able to do.
Yeah. And yep.
That's
completely ditto.
Completely ditto. So I think that is our episode for today.
I think so. I think we had a good conversation. Do you want to say goodbye?
I do. I'm not going to say it the fancy way. I'm going to say it how my other teacher taught me, and she taught me this last time. Okay. So, chauga.
Chauga. Okay, wait. I have to say goodbye. Okay. Adios. Gracias por ver.
And if I wanted to say thank you, but I said kamsahamnida earlier, so I'm going to do the informal way. Okay. So then you hear it both ways. Como.
Como.
So we will see you next week as we talk about Brooklyn Nine-Nine?
I think so.
Yeah.
So either that or Hot Daddies.
No, I think it's Brooklyn Nine-Nine, then BTS, and then
Hot Dads.
Well, in your area. It was just Best Dads.
Right.
Not in your area. That's Blackpink. And we'll see you later. Bye.